What if your company's biggest vulnerability wasn't your competition, but your own technology? Today's guest believes that when used strategically, IT isn't just support, it's your competitive advantage. Welcome to Industry Ignited, the show that dives into the minds of business leaders who are transforming their industries through innovation, vision, and grit. I'm your host, Dr. Leeanne Aguilar, and today we're exploring how technology can be used not just to keep businesses running, but to help them grow smarter, faster, and safer. My guest is Stephen Sweeney, CEO of Upright Services, a Texas-based managed services provider that's redefining IT for small and mid-sized businesses. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
All right. Well, we've known each other a while, and
We have.
it's fun to hear your story and learn a little bit more about you and how you got started. And interestingly enough, you actually started your career in education, and then it led into data management before you got into leading some of Texas's top tech service companies. So tell me a little bit about, how'd you get started and what inspired your transition from teacher to entrepreneur?
What inspired my transition from teacher to entrepreneur? Well, I can't say that it was really well mapped out. I think that sometimes, things happen in your life and you learn about what you like and what you might think you're going to be good at through experience. I wasn't the kind of kid who set out to be an entrepreneur, but, when I, kind of got more worldly and, through business experience and saw what other people were able to accomplish and understood kind of like the responsibility of business ownership and the potential rewards and also being kind of responsible to yourself, right? That you're kind of creating your own future. That's probably what appealed to me the most, right? Was having that level of kind of focus around what I could create for myself, my family, my employees, my clients. So.
All right. So just you'd have a little bit more, I guess, autonomy and the ability to be more creative and I guess create your own destiny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To a degree, I think, certainly, when not to get too personal about it, but when you see, adversity in the economy and how people are affected by downturns and layoffs. And, I certainly personally was involved in some of those situations. At some point you start to think about, okay, maybe I need to not be reliant on, the smarts and of others and, the opportunities that are being put in front of me and actually create some of those opportunities myself. And that's something that I felt like, drives me, that kind of goal orientation. And I understand it's not right for everybody. And it's not entirely like a self-serving thing. I really do feel like it's very virtuous to be an entrepreneur in terms of what you can create for others, not just for yourself. And, I think, for me, it just wasn't something that I ever planned out. Like I didn't know what I didn't know until I got into the world and started to see and experience those kind of things on myself and others. And then, and that's when I started seeking it out. Right. So I definitely probably in my mid to late 20s started really seeking out, how could I become an entrepreneur? Like what was going to be the best opportunity for me and my family? And certainly those things change as you grow older and you go through, you're being married, a young couple, having young kids. The opportunities change, but the intention was there. It was very intentional.
Right. And I think that is interesting, the way you went about it. I think a lot of times entrepreneurs just kind of dive in and they don't necessarily have a strategic plan about how to go about learning how to be an entrepreneur. They just find themselves in a situation. And then, like me, I'm a perfect example of that, learn it all backwards is what I say. But you took a different approach. You actually made the decision to become an entrepreneur and then basically found someone to learn under and then eventually worked your way up in that business. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I certainly tried and failed multiple times before getting it right, if you want to call it that way, right? In the end, I certainly tried starting, what I would call like a bootstrap startup consulting company that really didn't launch into anything significant. I certainly, got involved with the startup tech community, being involved not necessarily as a founder, but as like an early executive with, tech startups. So, I definitely, tried and dabbled in different things before landing on something like what I'm doing now, which in the way, I think what you're kind of alluding to is that I bought out my partners about 7 years ago. And yeah, that was actually a part of a plan. And I definitely, it was something that I learned about that approach while in grad school. So I
Uh-huh.
went back, got my MBA in my mid 30s. And during that time of exploration of, what I would do post graduation, still, having this kind of desire to do something entrepreneurial, but trying to find what the best way to do that in your late 30s with three small children. An advisor of mine, a mentor, had suggested, finding an entrepreneur, right, another entrepreneur who had built their business and was looking to exit at some future date, and work for that person for a number of years to earn the opportunity to buy them out when they were ready for their retirement. So it was going to take hard work and sacrifice on the front end, but you could put yourself in a very good position
Yeah.
4, 5, 6 years later, and that's the plan
Yeah.
that I embarked on at that time.
I think that it's a brilliant strategy because not only are you, I mean, you're learning along the way, not just for yourself, but you're learning from your mentor, basically. You have somebody there that's coaching you, that's guiding you while you're learning every aspect of the business
Yes,
from the inside.
very
Yeah.
much so. You're learning. Yeah, you absolutely are able. You're afforded time to kind of master the industry, which I think for any entrepreneur, I've had these conversations before with other entrepreneurs that nobody knows more about your business than you do. Nobody cares more about your business than you do. Which is not to say that employees don't care and employees don't know, but typically the entrepreneur can do almost every job in the company, right? That's not uncommon with a small business. And um, you know, if you just are a financial buyer and you buy a company without the benefit of working in it for multiple years, I think you're disadvantaged, right? It's not impossible. People do it, but you're disadvantaged as opposed to someone who kind of understands the industry, maybe has a plan for how they can grow within that industry or where that industry is going, and again, earn into the opportunity to buy into that business over time. So
Yeah.
yeah, it is a very good plan, and I'm glad it worked out, and certainly have passed that along to other aspiring
Hmm.
business owners that they consider that approach.
Yeah. Now you've described yourself as a business person in technology rather than a technology person in business. What do you mean by that? And how has that perspective shaped your leadership style?
Well, I mean, I guess the way I think of it is I've always been kind of a pragmatist, right? And while I'm and a geek, right? I mean, I'm a geek and a pragmatist. I've always enjoyed technology. I'm definitely an early adopter, right, of technology when it comes out. A tinkerer. I mean, that kind of personality. I want to know how things work, make them better. I'm not like trying to search for or take an invention or an innovation and find a solution, but I'm really trying to find a problem and a solution for that problem. So when I say, I'm a business person who thinks as a technologist, is, I'm really trying to understand where there's opportunity or gaps, right? Opportunities to be more efficient, opportunities to grow, opportunities to get into new markets, gaps that, hindering the business in some way or another, or risks, and finding innovative solutions for those things. And I'm not saying I have the answer to every problem that a business has, but the point of the matter is that you know by taking a consultative approach, right, as a business person, you can have pretty meaningful conversations with any type of business, right, whether any kind of operational or financial department, and really understand where there is need, where there's pain, where there's opportunity, and then consultatively use your background, your technology, what you've invested to learn and know what's going on in the industry and know what's going on in the technology ecosystem, right, that could be brought to a
Right.
business and add value, right, create value for that company. So that's I think maybe the easiest way I would describe, kind of how my personality is different. Now, like I said, I started as a technologist in the 90s and then went back and got my business degree. And that's kind of the approach that I've taken since.
Yeah. Yeah. So you worked in the field for a while, then went back to school. And then, with that, I guess, business background with your MBA kind of took the business approach from there and and grew. Now, looking back at your early years at Three Coast, which was the company that you ultimately bought part of,
Mm-hmm.
what were the biggest lessons that prepared you to eventually buy and lead your own company?
Well, I think, I kind of alluded to some of it earlier is understanding a business inside and out, like an actual operation inside and out, understanding like the clients. I think that's what one of the things that Three Coast, that being a part of Three Coast, helped in preparation for Upright, right? Upright is our current company, was getting really intimate with how the business worked and finding ways to be different in the industry, right? I think my mentor at the time, George, who I could tell lots of very flattering stories about how a great guy he was, how a great entrepreneur he was, and the things I learned from him. I think he was always very open to innovation, finding new problems to solve, finding ways to adapt the business model to add more value for clients. I mean, those are kind of things that in that early stage of kind of working as George's right-hand man are the things that I learned and was able to apply, going into ultimately buying out the company.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you finally took ownership of Upright, what vision did you have for the company and how has that evolved over time?
Well, I think, one of the things I've always kind of tried to keep at the forefront was I want to be a market leader, right, in the markets we serve, right? I want to be a leader in the markets that we serve. I can't be a leader in everything, right? I mean, I don't think that's, really a very clear enough goal, but if we're going to be in a market, I want to be a top provider in that market. And I think that's sort of shaped generally our plan, right? Our business plan is, understanding where, are we short? Like, where are we not measuring up? Where are the gaps in order to, that we need to close in order to be a leader in the market we serve. It's also been great for simplifying, right? I mean, we can't be everything for everybody. So what are we going to focus on? And what are some things maybe we're not going to focus on? To be kind of more selective about where we feel like we can be competitive and where we can be different or better, right? And,
Yeah.
we're a service provider. It's very hard to differentiate as a service provider, but I think that's been the kind of the core of the vision is to do what it takes to be a market leader in the markets that we serve. And how has it changed over time? I think the main difference is, we've started to see how, being a kind of a Texas focused firm as opposed to a Houston focused firm would be beneficial to both, our employees, our clients, and our overall kind of like, marketing and kind of brand vision. And that is not something that I definitely anticipated. I think I anticipated that, when I was defining like what is the market we serve, I was thinking the greater Houston area, right? That's the focus.
Right.
But now, this is as of maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we've expanded that market focus to be Texas. And, a few of the key reasons are, our clients have footprints that are not just Houston, and they need local presence in different markets. They also have staff and employees and infrastructure in other states, but we've had to build capabilities to be able to support those areas as well. We've seen the benefit of diversification, right? Like, I view our clientele as being kind of a portfolio of clients, and that portfolio, needs to be diverse in terms of the industries, diverse in terms of like the geographies. That makes us a more stable company, right? More stable company because we're not subject to, any exposures in any particular industry. We've also diversified away from the Gulf Coast, right? We're not all Gulf Coast focused. And for, those of you who are in the Gulf Coast area, that, there can be some disruptions in due to weather. And certainly my heart goes out to the folks in the Caribbean and Jamaica. I mean, they're feeling it right now, right? And those are not pleasant things to go through. They're very disruptive. But again, I feel like Upright as a company is stronger, and the employees feel like they have more security, and certainly the clients have more security by having some geographic diversity as well.
Yeah, right. No, and I think that's a smart approach, like you mentioned, to not try to be all things to all people. It's interesting because I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and especially when they're starting out, you'll ask, well, who's your target audience? Who's your, market? Who are you trying to serve? And they'll say everyone. And everyone, it's like, okay, well, that's not necessarily true. And also, that's not very practical, because if you try to serve everyone, then your marketing budget, especially, is going to get diluted very quickly, and you're going to end up
And it's so
spending.
hard. It's so hard, especially like as a
Yeah.
technologist, because you really, I mean, I think ultimately, we're problem solvers, right? And I think technology companies and the people we hire, I mean, we very much are wired towards, if there's a problem, we can fix it, right? We will find a way.
Yeah.
There's got to be a tool, a solution, a partner. I mean, somebody out there, and if it doesn't exist, doggone it, we'll invent it, right? We'll find a way.
Yes.
And you come into this business, wired to solve problems, and you're wired to be innovative. But the fact is, you have to focus. Like, you do have
Right.
to ultimately focus, and find that balance between innovation and being innovative, and understanding what's a really good opportunity, and you need to actually invest in it, and then things that just best just to find the right partner for the client, or partner with someone else.
Yeah.
There's just other ways. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I like that you focus on your differentiators, and then also you let your clients guide your growth as well. I mean, so you are listening to your customers and followed their lead as far as, how to grow, where to grow. And that actually took you in a direction that you didn't expect to begin with.
So key. Yeah.
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 Being I think again, that kind of consultative approach, which probably goes back to even, back from when I was, I was an educator for a year before getting into technology, was just this idea of listening, right? Empathy,
Yeah.
right? Really understanding, that trying to understand as best one can, the situation, and that it's different than maybe what you're coming from, like what you're bringing into the workplace. And if you approach things with that kind of level of empathy and engagement, I think you're well positioned to find solutions.
Yeah. Now, you've mentioned that Upright's approach is to act as a strategic partner and not just a service provider. How does that philosophy change the client experience?
Well, I mean, we think it's a big deal. I mean, we think that's a gap, in the industry, and it's a differentiator for us. I mean, honestly, we don't do things because of what the competition does or doesn't do. I mean, we do it because we feel like it's the right way to do it for our clients, and and then also because it's consistent with our culture or in our values. But I think my I guess philosophy on this is that there's probably no other service provider relationship with a client that is more intimate than your IT management. And that can either be a very good thing, a very positive thing, or it can be a very neutral thing, or it could not, it could be a very negative thing. When you think about a small business and what runs a small business, I mean, they are 100% dependent on their IT infrastructure. That needs to be robust, available. Their employees need to be productive. They need to be, not exposed to risk, right? The disruption of risk, and when you talk about risk, you can talk about whether that's disaster recovery, something where you have a potential data loss. It could be something related to cybersecurity. It's such an ingrained aspect of a business that as a service provider, I mean, our teams are working with our clients' employees all the time. I mean,
Right.
daily, and as a result, I think that that's an opportunity to engage with the client, in a very overused term of partnership, right? That we really want to be that kind of intimate a level of service provider. It will affect the conversations we have, right? That the information that we're sharing with them, the information that we're expecting that they will share with us, and certainly the more we understand about the business priorities, the better we can serve them with technology.
Yeah,
So.
exactly. Yeah. And I know for a lot of small and mid-sized businesses, because of that, I mean, IT is such a big part of their company, it can feel overwhelming. What are some of the common technology mistakes you see, and how can companies overcome them?
Well, So, okay, and just to make sure we understand, like we serve the small mid-sized business. We also serve the mid-market as well, and they do have some of the same patterns, or I see some of the same patterns in decision making. I think that and it may sound self-serving, but I think the number one mistake is underinvesting in technology. That many business leaders overlook hidden cost, right? The hidden cost of lower productivity than what they could experience. And I think studies over and over again say that that companies in general who invest more in technology are the leaders in their industries, right? They are more profitable, and they make short-term decisions on expense that really have a overweight impact long term on
Mm-hmm.
their success. And we often talk about noise, right? Like we're trying to eliminate noise, friction, right? Just things that are disruptive, distracting, right, from the task. One relatively minor IT issue that affects one person's productivity for an hour, that's a lost hour you never get back. That's
Right.
also an hour that can affect other people in the office. It can affect other downstream workflows.
Right.
Certainly if a manager gets involved and that's a distraction. So there's just so many things that, if companies, invested more, in keeping things up to date, invested more in technologies that are going to eliminate risk, invested more in proactive services, right, that prevent issues, that would be virtuous to their overall business.
Yeah. Well, Stephen, question, because with technology changing so quickly, I mean, how often does the company need to, reassess and update and upgrade?
So that's a great question. I mean, I think it's that kind of goes back to my point. Is that a partner is going to be watching those things continuously, right? Our approach would be, we want to sit down with a client and we would like a roadmap of what the next several years are going to look like. And obviously, with short term, it's more certain. Longer term, it's less. But it's not always about refreshing technology. We're not talking about large capital expenditures necessarily, but what we are talking about is when there are opportunities to become more efficient, making sure that we are identifying those things and we're putting them on some sort of roadmap for consideration with a client. The cycle of how often we meet with them will be very dependent on them and their industry, and certainly like what level of complexity. But again, the point of the matter is that a good IT partner is having conversations with you about those things,
Right.
right? And it's what distinguishes between a proactive managed service provider and a reactive managed service provider. A reactive managed service provider is tackling issues when they pop up. A proactive provider is trying to eliminate surprises altogether.
Right. Exactly. So it's like you don't necessarily have to update to the newest version of your iPhone or get a brand new computer every time there's a new release, but you do want to make sure that your technology or you're up to date, so you're not being slowed down. So if there's a operating system release or new software that you could implement that could improve processes and could improve your workflow, those are the kind of things that you're more concerned
Yeah.
about.
So I think this is going to date the podcast, but right now, Windows 11 is Windows 10 is going on end of life, or actually just went end of life. Windows 11 has to be implemented. Those are things that can be roadmapped, years in advance, right? No surprises. Like your managed service provider, should be working with you to have those things on the roadmap to be remediated over time. But one of the things that small and even mid-market businesses, their business plan is like my business plan, which is to be the best at what they do, right? You want to be the best at what you do. You want to own your market, whatever that market happens to be. You're striving for excellence in your operation, and more often than not, that doesn't involve being an excellent at IT, right? That excellent IT, you're not investing in the time and the skills and the research to know what is the best solution for X, Y, Z, right? You're really focusing on your business
Of
and
course.
what it
Yeah.
takes. And that's why, a good partner does that for you, right? Like we make changes to our technology stack all the time. Like if we feel like, tool A has kind of just outlived, how, its evolution, right? It's just not going to get marginally better. And we see this all the time with tools. Remember, a new software tool come out, which is great today, but 10 years later, it's bloated. It's, that vendor's not going to be able to kind of reinvent that tool. And your service provider needs to be thinking about, okay, well, what is next, right? What is the, we're going to need to move from A to B. And the best service providers, we do that for you. Like we don't even get you involved in that decision, right? Like we're managing those things for you, so you don't have to. And that's the kind of proactivity that you should be able to expect, which allows you to focus, all of your energy on your operation and your business.
Right. Okay. So really talking about, you've built your culture and your team provides that service excellence. And so tell me more about how you define service excellence and how you instill it in your team of 40 plus professionals.
Sure. First of all, another thing that's not easy. I think everybody, every business owner has a similar challenge in their business. And I think it starts with culture, right? It starts with a cultural decision on the kind of company you're going to be. And we've decided that, we are going to be a company that is really focused on servanthood, right? How we can best serve our clients, how we can best serve ourselves. And that means, the kind of training and education we provide our employees, the kind of leadership and management we provide our employees. But as it ties back into the client, it's designing the service experience and being very intentional on that. And this is a tricky one for us, and certainly probably every industry is, you don't want to create something that's so rigid where kind of individual personality and creativity is suppressed. Right. But at the same time, you need to design the service experience where it has the outcomes and that you expect for that client, like that user experience. So, in our case, when a user has a high priority issue and they need to pick up the phone and call, like, how do we want that service experience to feel? Yeah. Right. What questions are we going to ask? What order are we going to ask them in? What kind of words are we going to use? Right? Are they going to be empathetic words? Are we going to make sure that we're not talking to the users in techno jargon? I mean, those kind of things. Every single kind of customer touch point or say client touch point, needs to be very intentional, and that's a big challenge. It's a particularly big challenge in a small business, because in a small business we all have, we have lots of hats, and we certainly, it's harder to standardize and find the time to design those things, but that's the secret sauce, right? Yeah. Is in being intentional and designing it the way you want your clients to experience.
Oh, absolutely. Because I say if you don't define and guide your culture, then it will design and create itself. And that's not always a good thing. So if you're not intentional about, leading and developing that culture, it can become toxic very quickly. Yeah. And I think that's part of branding, though. It's part of establishing your brand is defining that culture. It is your mission and vision. It's your values. It's what you stand for. It's what, you're bringing to the table, that value proposition that you're bringing to your clients, and having your entire team become, being very aware of that and being aligned with your overall objectives. And it is the language, like you're saying, it's how you talk about yourselves. It's the words you use to describe yourself, your business, and because that defines you to your target audience, right?
Yeah, I like to say that like every company has a culture, right? Whether they were intentional about building it or not, right?
Exactly.
I mean, your culture is, it's the collection of your people and how they believe and feel about what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish. And one of the best things about being a business owner, to me, and also one of the most challenging things, is holding that together, right?
Right. And, yes.
Because there's really no one else who can carry that banner, right, for the company. And in a business where everyone's busy, right? That's something
Yeah.
that it's hard to find time, right? But there's no one else who can do it other than the, kind of the leadership of the company, and it's critical. So I think, we've acquired, to get into new markets, we're in the process of acquiring right now. And that's one of the big challenges, right? When you take a company and you increase it by, a third, right? In terms of, employee count, is like, how do you hold that culture together? Because you're basically you're changing, or culture is changing because you just added 20 more people who don't think the way you think. But we can't let that change upright, right? Like,
Yeah.
upright still has to be upright, what we have designed it to be. And it's not all operational procedures and what tools we use, right? It's not all those things. It's always is how we think. And I can tell you, like, in our experience of acquiring, that's a big challenge. It's fun.
Hmm.
It's not easy, but it absolutely is something that has to be done. And
Yeah.
maybe, in enterprise acquisitions, they do it differently, or maybe they've got whole teams that worry about culture. But in a company our size, that's a management team responsibility.
Right.
And so when we bought, most recently in San Antonio, that was a big part of our plan. Is how do we make sure that they understand our culture? And it's not just putting it on the back of your business card, or putting it on a poster in the office, right? It has to be, show them, tell them, ask questions about it,
Hmm.
test them on it. I
Very
mean,
intentional
it has,
and guided. Yeah.
in like years. I mean, it's not just a check the box on the project plan either. I mean, it's something that just has to be hit over and over and over and over again. Is
Yeah.
culture, and values.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if the culture that they're coming from, is very different. Like in marketing, I mean, somebody has to see something 7 to 10 times for it to like stick, in the
Mm-hmm.
brain. And I think that's with anything with habit forming. You have to do something for 30 to 60 days or something before you establish a new habit. So I think it's that exposure, it's that being told and reminded and redirected sometimes over and over again before those things become second nature, for change to occur. And also oftentimes there's a resistance. I mean, did you experience any kind of resistance when coming in and working to merge and
Well, I mean, certainly not active resistance. I mean, I think there's all kinds of kind of preconceived notions about, things that have to be illuminated. And I mean, I was going to add that, when we are looking at companies to acquire, right, culture is something that is on our list. Like, we
Mhm.
want cultural compatibility, right?
Yeah, that makes
We don't,
makes a
we
huge
don't,
difference. Yes.
right. And usually it starts with the values of the owner or the management team, right? And that's something you can ascertain relatively early, whether there's some compatibility there.
Right.
And certainly they're looking for that in the buyer as well. So, I mean, everybody's trying to find, some, like-mindedness. But, assuming you kind of got past that, and then you've got, a general idea that there's compatibility, but that doesn't mean that they understand our 5 values, and those are be the 5 values that they
Yeah.
hold dear, right? They're not, they're non-negotiables, right? I mean, that's the way, the way those values are. I think in terms of obstacles or just integration, I mean, integration is just not easy. It's just not easy. And, I think some of the things that I've learned, and experienced is that I'm not change averse. Never been change averse. I've been involved in acquisitions on the other side where we got acquired.
Yeah.
And, you look to the person on the left and they're happy-go-lucky. Okay, yeah, sure. I'm ready for something new. And then you look at the person on the right and they're just freaking out, right? Because
Yeah.
they can't deal with the change. They don't, they need certainty. What's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen next month? And, when you're acquiring, you just run into the whole gamut, right?
Yeah.
You're going to run into people who are like, oh yeah, great, looking forward to it. I've been, kind of bored here for a while, and something new, doing things differently sounds great. And then others that are just really, wrapped around the axle about the insecurity of things. So again, it gets back to over communication,
Mm-hmm.
and that's lessons learned, right? We didn't do it perfect. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no doubt of that. But those are things that, we've, I guess, experienced now. And, the team is more in tune to those things of how to better over communicate and
Mm-hmm.
not assume that a message delivered once was understood.
Yeah.
You know,
That makes sense. Right. And what you're describing, I think, is mindset. It's like everyone or different people have different mindsets. And so while you can't ever anticipate what the mindsets are going to be in between individuals, it's more of becoming aware to the fact that there will be different mindsets and learning how to be okay with navigating that. And because you can't foresee every problem that's going to come up. You can't. I mean, you can anticipate that there will be bumps in the road.
right.
You can't really predict. So speaking of like cybersecurity, I know
Mhm.
it's a growing concern for people these days. How can smaller companies protect themselves without breaking their budgets when it comes to cybersecurity threats?
Well, so, first of all, I don't think that cybersecurity prevention or cyber issue prevention is, an enormous investment. I don't think that it is something that does break the bank. I think that, um, first of all, any business, regardless of their size and their investment in IT, should understand that the number one threat vector to their business is their employees, right? Is someone getting fooled, right, or tricked, or maybe even malice, or disgruntled employees. I mean, that they're the human element, right, is something that really IT can only do limited amount of things to prevent, right? So,
Right.
um, so that can be everything from having better operational procedures for paying bills, right? I mean, the AP, these are the kind of the stories you hear about fraud being committed because someone paid a bill that they shouldn't have paid, verifying information from their suppliers, um, making sure that their customers know what a valid invoice looks like and what doesn't, right? And those kind of things are process oriented and
Mm-hmm.
they're education oriented. And certainly a cyber solution provider, which we are, right? We're a managed cybersecurity service provider, we'll have a range of kind of tools that we can bring to help with those things. One of them is security awareness training. We see that most cybersecurity insurance policies require it, or they're certainly asking, are you educating your employees on cybersecurity? Whether it's clean desk policies, understanding, email, how to recognize, malicious emails, understanding the different kinds of attempts that can be, waged on your company,
Yeah.
so that your employees can be part of the a part of the vigilance, right? That it's part of their job responsibilities to be vigilant and stay alert to situations that might end up being fraud. Um, and then I guess along those lines, I think that businesses, if you do not have a cybersecurity insurance policy, you should. And I think just the process of getting cybersecurity insurance would be illuminating to
Mm-hmm.
know what kind of prevention mechanisms need to be in place, right?
Yeah.
And I can
Right.
tell you, but honestly, your insurance provider is going to tell you because they're the ones that are going to be underwriting your risk, and they will give you better rating, right? Better rated policies, or they will choose to not give you a policy if they feel like you are a risk. So, some of the big check boxes: two-factor authentication on email. Number one thing we see is people who don't have two-factor authentication on their email. They are vulnerable to impersonation, right?
Mm.
Someone getting in your mailbox and defrauding somebody, or you're either defrauding you or defrauding someone else.
Right.
Certainly, there are great tools out there that are AI assisted to monitor your computer behavior, your server behavior. That would be something called managed endpoint detection and response (EDR). It's really a great antivirus solution, and on top of that. But those are kind of like belt and suspenders. Combine it with good backups, you become a much less likely target, right? If you have those 4 or 5 boxes checked. Can you go a lot further? Sure. And in some industries you have to, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you're in the financial industry, you've got certain compliance requirements that go beyond that. If you're HIPAA, you've got some requirements, that go beyond that as well. Most businesses,
Mm-hmm.
you check those 5 boxes, it's like you don't have to outrun the bear, right? You have to outrun the guy that you're hiking with, right? You just want to be not the softest target, right? Because those are the ones
Right.
that get the attention. If they hit some roadblocks, initially, they're going to be moving on to someone else who's more vulnerable. So
Yeah.
don't worry about outrunning the bear. Just work with an MSSP
hmm
that can help guide you through that process.
Yeah. And you mentioned AI, and I mean, right now it's the big buzz, and it's transforming, like every industry is looking how AI can be implemented.
hmm
What does AI mean for managed IT and cybersecurity?
Sure. Well, first of all, I love AI. Big fan. I think it's it's going to change the world. Already is changing the world. I think generally people kind of underestimate the amount of change, but they overestimate the amount of time it's going to take to get there.
Mm,
Right. So I don't think anybody should be panicking about AI, but I think everyone ought to be learning about it and thinking about how it can impact their businesses, their lives, et cetera. There should be a ton of innovation, and that's available. And if you're out there looking at the different innovations, I mean, there are just amazing things being invented around AI right now. I think when it comes to cybersecurity, it's good offense and good defense, right? The bad guys are using AI, right? They're using AI to go past automation, right? So they've been doing automation for a number of years, right?
right.
There's not a guy in the keyboard just emailing you directly, right? They're writing software to email hundreds and thousands of people, and then you take AI and put that on top of it to try to, be smarter about what Leanne would respond to, right?
Yeah.
What kind of things is Leanne going to respond to that Stephen wouldn't, or vice versa, right? So you have AI being used by the criminals, and as you can imagine, you have AI being invested in on the defense mechanisms to be smarter about how to defeat those things.
Right.
So, that's just the war that's being waged between the good guys and the bad guys on the cybersecurity side. So, we should all expect that more and more of our tools that we use are going to be AI infused, right, or AI enabled. They're going to be more kind of AI technology making them better and beyond just cybersecurity, other tools as well. So certainly, you look at the Microsoft tool set. I mean, they're big investors in OpenAI. They've got Copilot. Their Copilot may not be the greatest tool right now, but it's pretty good, and it's going to get better, and it's just going to get better. Every 6 months. I mean, you expect better features and better capabilities. I mean, just in the last year, what Copilot can do compared to what it could do when it was launched, pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Pretty incredible. So I think that again, every business and business owners need to be thinking about what can AI do for them. A good kind of heuristic, if you want to call it that, is think about automation. Right, what process could you automate, or maybe what process did you already automate? And then AI making it smarter. Okay, it's like an automated task is a repetitive task that someone had to do. Step one, step two, step three. Automated would maybe streamlining that task. Maybe it interfaces with multiple systems. Maybe it works through a workflow, a series of steps. Maybe there's a decision tree that says, go do this if that's the case, go do that if it's something else. Automation is great. It's great for efficiency. You leverage your resources better. AI automation is sort of the next step, right? Is how can I make that workflow that you could automate smart, right? Where maybe you have a decision point and it just can adapt better, right? Not necessarily come in with a third branch, but how to be smarter about choosing A versus B, and maybe not requiring kind of the rigid structured input, right? So if you maybe had an automation 10 years ago, what it was receiving had to be in a very structured format. Otherwise, it would go, I don't know what to do with this thing, right? I can't automate this because it's not in the format I expect. AI can sit there and say, oh, I know what this is. I recognize that. It might not be exactly what I've seen in the past, but, you told me that it's close enough, and, I believe that it's what you're looking for. And, or maybe it's smart enough to say, hey, tell me, is this an invoice or is this something else? Those are, I think, some kind of transformational things. If you can find workflows in your business that can be automated and then enabled through some sort of AI or agentic AI.
Yeah. So I'm hearing, AI is really going to, just enhance the automations that are there, and they offer more flexibility and they can learn basically from what you teach them. And so, offering, that ongoing enhancements and taking away tasks that were, not fun for people anyway.
Right. So, in our business, just a real simple example. I mean, it's not, it's not like a huge competitive advantage, but, we use AI to categorize our service requests, right? That instead of a person having to read a ticket, read a service request and decide what kind of issue it is like we let AI categorize it for us, and it's right. Not every time, but a lot of the time, we let it rewrite the descriptions because sometimes, a person will put a subject line that has nothing to do with the actual service request. We'll have it rewrite the description so that, again, we can look at it and recognize it more easily. We use AI to summarize, right? We might have a ticket that has 20 communications back and forth between technicians and between the users, to have AI summarize those things and put it at the top. So, anybody who needs to go look at a ticket can kind of glance and see the timeline. Likewise, when a ticket is closed, summarizing the solution so we can actually see what actually got done instead of having to pour through all of these notes and details. So, lots of things, just in our business to help us provide a better service. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's going to be more and more AI-based solutions for us to use that are coming from our tool ecosystem.
Yeah. So I'm hearing in your case, it's really creating more effective communication. It's helping you, like you said, rewrite topic lines and categorize. And so it's making that communication, giving it more clarity and simplifying it so it's more understandable, and that will increase efficiency.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that our team can be more effective, right, if they have better information and it's at the ready reference, and that they don't have to spend time trying to figure certain things out. I mean, we operate at a fast pace, and we have dispatchers, right? Dispatchers is our role, is a critical role that makes sure that the workflow of service requests are being handled the way they need to be.
Right.
And that's making sure that high priority issues are treated as high priority issues, make sure that issues are being worked by the right resource in our company, right? Like the person who actually can solve that issue, hopefully on the first touch. And those are all things that, we rely a dispatcher to know. But if we can provide that person with better information, or maybe even just a recommendation of, hey, this is the tech that is probably the right tech for this ticket, and then they validate it and they assign it, right? That we've saved time by using something, again, an AI assisted or AI enabled workflow.
Right, right. And you also mentioned that Upright is exploring AI as a service. And what does that mean, and how could that help your customers or other businesses operate?
And that's been a key emphasis area for us this year. And I think it's a, first of all, it is in the industry on the whole, right? It's not just Upright, although I like to say that I've been talking about it longer than they have. But certainly it's not something that is exclusive to Upright. But I feel like our role as kind of like the technology advocate for a business from 10 users to 1,000 users is to, one, like we need to be leveraging these kind of technologies first, right? Like we need to, find ways to be more efficient with the latest. And that means becoming an AI infused MSP, right? So we embrace that, right? That we're going to find ways to work smarter, more efficiently, to provide a better service. Second, like we need to be a guide or a leader, right, for our clients to help them understand where their opportunities are. So, I can't be an expert in every industry, but I can help a client understand, what some of the capabilities are, what are some of the possibilities, consultatively to find workflows that can be automated in a smart way. And then third, what we can do is we can enable a client to get started on their own, right? Whether that's with Upright or with a software developer to help them build their own agents. We as their service provider, we are familiar with their systems, we're familiar with their data stores, we're familiar with their applications, and we can help them do the initial step of preparing their environment for for AI development.
Yeah.
And that's what when I say AI as a service, is that sort of consultative and groundwork, right,
Right.
to create a
Yeah.
basis to start doing innovation within that operation.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, like you said, you're in their systems daily or on a regular basis, so you really understand their systems of technology, the data, and so consulting with them to give them I guess a baseline of what they possibly could do, and you have the
Yeah.
experience with the AI, and then you can make recommendations on how they can take that forward. That makes
And one
sense.
of the big obstacles for any business, when they're thinking about AI, is understanding that like anything, like bad data in is bad data out, right? I mean,
Yes,
you have to
exactly.
have good, clean information. Data governance is important, right? That
Hmm.
you have access to something, and employee B cannot have access to something, and you can't just throw it all into an AI where someone could ask questions and get answers that they're not allowed to get. So payroll information, accounting information. I mean, so that data governance is something that a company like ours can help with, right? Because often a client hasn't gone through the effort to really determine who's the data owner, what data is good, what data is obsolete, cleaning it up, and then
Yeah.
making it available to AI. So, that's AI as a service.
So, Stephen, you've seen decades of evolution in IT, from servers to the cloud to AI. What excites you most about where technology is headed next?
Well, okay. So first, I'll just say it is a very exciting time right now, and it's one of the reasons why I'm so invested in the company is that I feel like the next 5 to 10 years is going to be just a very dynamic period where things are changing and they're going to continue to change. And not to go historical, but think about how the introduction of the internet, right, changed things in that time period. I mean, I feel like we are there right now with AI, and at the same time, we're still in a position where companies are still trying to take advantage of the technology that came out in the last 5 or 10 years, right?
Hmm.
So I think what we have right now is this landscape where you have companies that have underinvested in technology and are trying to catch up. You have companies that are well positioned but still have to that last mile, right? There's things that they need to do. And then you have these companies that are just totally innovative, maybe even brand new, right? That don't have the legacy baggage, right?
Right.
And are ready just to hit the ground running with the latest technologies. And as an IT service provider, I mean, I just think this is very exciting because there are so many solutions that we can be offering and that we can help clients with that are on different stages of their journey. I think that technology is just up and to the right. I mean, there's just going to be so much that needs to be done. It's just, like I said, a very, very exciting time for us.
Yeah, and it's so much more accessible and more affordable these days. I mean, technology that wasn't available, 10 years ago or you had or was super expensive is now, a subscription service that you can pay monthly at a fraction of the fee. And, you don't have to have like this big overhead or capital investment that previously you would have had to do. So it is exciting. I agree. Now, finally, as you look ahead to Upright's next 5 years, what's your vision for the future, and how do you see technology continuing to shape the success of Texas businesses?
Well, so our goal is to grow into the major markets of Texas here in Texas. So we're a Texas focused MSP. I see our growth to be establishing really substantial markets in Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, and Austin. We see a lot of synergies between those locations. So I think for us, kind of geographic expansion and growth is going to be very exciting. I feel like our ability to invest in our clients and becoming more of a business service provider than just a technology provider. So, I think the opportunity to us is to make our offerings vertically focused, to really get even more intimate with those businesses.
Yeah.
And then certainly the innovation around helping clients automate workflows and being more involved in that than an enabler that we are today.
Yeah. Well, exciting times ahead. I mean, yeah, I look forward to watching your growth and seeing you expand into these new markets and all that Upright will we'll see in the upcoming years. So,
Thank you. I
well,
appreciate that.
yeah. Well, Stephen, thank you for joining me today and for sharing your story of not only leadership, but innovation and purpose. Your journey is a powerful reminder that when businesses align their technology with their mission, growth follows naturally. So for listeners who want to learn more about Upright Services or connect with you, where can they find out more?
You can go to upright.com. That's uprite.com. Or you can feel free to call us at 281-956-2280 and ask for Stephen. I'm happy to take your call.
All right. Well, thank you again. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to follow and subscribe to Industry Ignited for more conversations with leaders transforming their industries. And until next time, stay bold, stay curious, and keep igniting industry.